Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Better get the cool slow, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. I got a chance to take a look at the new Blue Beetle movie on HBO Max. Now, Blue Beetle was released later in the summer in the hopes that Warner Bros. Discovery would be able to have a box office hit after having two big flops in Shazam Fury of the Gods and The Flash, and the hopes that Blue Beetle would be a film that will appeal to audiences in the struggling superhero genre. Unfortunately, Blue Beetle wound up flopping at the box office and wound up becoming the third biggest box office failure for Warner Bros. Discovery as related to superhero films. And after watching this film on Max for $2.99 for the subscription that I signed up for, I can honestly say that I wish I could get my money back because this film wasn't worth the cost as related to what I paid for it. Now, Blue Beetle is another mid-adaptation from Warner Bros. Discovery, and like Black Adam that came before it, while it stays very true to the source material, that source material isn't strong enough to go out here and create a compelling story that answers the critical question every screenwriter like myself has to answer before you put fingers to the keyboard, and that question is, why should we care? This entire film basically feels like it wasn't made out of passion or love for the entire superhero genre or the character of Blue Beetle. No, it feels like another one of those films produced off an assembly line, similar to that of the plants where they used to make the old Chevrolet Citation and the GM X-Body cars, like the Pontiac Phoenix. It feels like something that's just genuinely just manufactured just to be a cash grab. And it's got some little foot figures and designs on it made to design to appeal to a Hispanic audience. That's the only reason why they're making the Blue Beetle Fiesta movie, and this movie is not a party to get through. No, it's a very indifferent experience, just like Black Adam was back in 2022. And this bland, uninspired film really doesn't make you care to really watch it or even care to remember it. No, it just feels like another desperate attempt by Warner Bros. Discovery to try to find a formula to replicate the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this film reeks of so much desperation that you feel like you're watching a film that was copy and pasted from other Marvel Studios films. It doesn't have that distinct feel that Tim Burton's 1989 Batman has, or Richard Donner's 1978 Superman has, or even 2017 Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman has. All of those films have distinct feels and fingerprints that, while they stay true to the source material, still have a feeling of distinctness that make you feel like it's a unique, one-of-a-kind film. But with Blue Beetle, it doesn't feel unique or distinct at all. No, it feels like something that was just Control-C, Control-V for the screenplay, and as they copy and pasted scenes that they saw in Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, they hope to be able to make a film that would be on the same level. Unfortunately, instead of us getting a film with the rich, multidimensional characters that we got in films like 2008's Iron Man, and even before the MCU with 2002's Spider-Man, those films basically were films that felt like distinct cinema and was true to the comic books that they came from. With Blue Beetle, yes, we've got a film that is just like the comic, but sadly it's two-dimensional, just like a comic book. and is more for popcorn entertainment, but not really anything that shows you a reason to say, hey, this film is special and unique. No, Blue Beetle feels very generic and very bland, but the problem I have with Blue Beetle is that the screenplay, if they had just put another draft through, maybe they could have possibly had a classic. Unfortunately, they didn't really do the work on the screenplay, just like they did with Black Adam, and what we got was another mid film that had the potential to be great. Now, Blue Beetle is supposed to be the story of Jaime Reyes, a recent college graduate who's coming back to home to California to go and be with his family, who are dealing with some fiscal struggles as his father just had a heart attack. His uncle is out here with conspiracy theories, and his mother and grandmother are just there. And that's one of the big problems I have with Blue Beetle, is that this film is cluttered with characters. Now, I know the screenwriter wanted to go out here and do a story about the largeness of a Latino family, but the problem with this is it doesn't really work well when it comes to screenwriting, because if you have too many characters on screen, what happens is this prevents the story from being able to move as related to moving cinematically. And with Blue Beetle, because there are so many characters, it becomes hard for the story to move, and it's hard for us to see Jaime as the center of the film and be the center focus of the story, the way Peter Parker was in 2002 Spider-Man. Now, in 2002 Spider-Man, Peter Parker was the center of that film. We were able to get to know him. We were able to get to know he was a bit of a nerd. We were able to know that he was into science. He had a friend, Harry Osborn, who was in contrast at everything that in the life that he wanted and the success that he wanted. And while he saw Harry having power, he wanted power for himself. So we really got to know him, but we couldn't get to know Jaime because his family was put in front of us. And again, he's got a grandma, he's got a mother, he's got a father, he's got an uncle, he's got a sister. I mean, he's got this huge family, and that family, when they're on screen, basically take away screen time from him and prevent him from being able to develop as a character who's supposed to be a young guy who's out here looking to try to find a job. And the way he gets the job and gets connected to the whole cord industry story isn't very organic at all. It comes across as sort of like a J.P. Penny pincher. You've got Ted Kord's daughter, who conveniently runs into Jaime, and as he runs into Jaime, offers him a job out of spiting her aunt. And this whole story basically just never really comes together organically. I mean, yes, Jaime gets the scarab and gets the powers, but the whole thing is we don't have anything that really connects us to him or really see a foundation for his mission for being a hero. That's the other problem I have with Blue Beetle, is that Jaime doesn't really have a mission for being a hero the way MCU characters have. I mean, with MCU characters and even 2002 Spider-Man, there's a mission for the character, and that mission is what drives the whole overall origin story. I mean, the origin story as related to Tony Stark was he wanted to keep his weapons from winding up in the hands of terrorists, and he wanted to defend people from the terrors of those who would be like his co-worker, Obadiah Stane. And with Steve Rogers, he wanted to serve his country, and he wanted to protect his country from the threats of Hydra. And with Thor, he was basically a god being humbled and looking to try to find a reason for protecting humanity and finding his way back to being a protector of humanity. And with the Hulk, you have this guy who's a monster and he wants to harness that power for doing good. And with Black Panther, again, he wants to protect Wakanda. So there's a mission for those characters, but there's no mission for Jaime in this movie outside of, Scarab attaches itself to him, and as it attaches itself to him, He's just out here looking to have this power, but why does he need to have this power? And that's the question that isn't answered. Yes, we get all this convoluted story about Ted Kord's sister and her wanting to make these OMACs, these one-man army corps, and wanting to harness the data of the scarabs. But the whole thing is it doesn't really come together into anything compelling to make us see this as any sort of credible threat to anyone. If anything, this story suffers from a problem I've seen with many modern comics, in that the characters are so insular to each other that they don't form any sort of personal connection to the reader or the audience to make us see that they're a part of a larger world. That's the big problem with Blue Beetle, is that the story, unlike the stories of Iron Man and 2002 Spider-Man and Thor and Captain America and the Incredible Hulk, we don't feel like they're a part of a larger world. No, we feel like they're a part of an insular world. And that was the other problem that Black Adam had, was that Black Adam just felt like it was in one little confined space. It didn't feel like it was something that we should care about. It felt like something, oh, this is happening locally, but it didn't have that impact that make you say, hey, this hero is protecting the world and protecting the world from a threat. It felt more like a personal problem between two characters, and that's not enough to make you care. That is the problem with Blue Beetle, and that's what really bugged me about this film. Because as I was watching this desperate attempt to try to replicate the success of the MCU by cutting and pasting scenes from Marvel Cinematic Universe movies like Spider-Man Homecoming and Iron Man 2002 Spider-Man, and even Netflix hallway fights from Daredevil and Luke Cage, I didn't see a film that was unique. I didn't see a film that was special. I didn't see a film that was a spectacle. No, I saw just a generic, bland superhero movie, and I never thought I'd be able to say that today. But after seeing the spectacles of Iron Man and the MCU and the conclusion of the Infinity Saga, after seeing these huge spectacles, this Blue Beetle movie is nothing special and comes across more like a cockroach running across a screen rather than something special at all. You've just copy and pasted from Spider-Man, Iron Man, Venom, and maybe a couple of other superhero movies, like even your own Justice League and some Netflix shows, but there's not one original idea up on the screen of Blue Beetle. And yes, it's a movie about a Hispanic superhero, but there was nothing about the content of Jaime's character that made me care about him, and the whole touches of Hispanic culture really came across as really more like Hispanic stereotypes than a real feel of Hispanic culture. Now, as someone who has lived in neighborhoods that have been predominantly Hispanic for over 30 years of my life, I lived around Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, Mexicans, Latin culture, and I didn't really feel like this film was very much about the overall Latin culture. No, Jaime, basically, he feels like a white guy's version of Hispanic, and I've heard this from Hispanic people. I remember I was walking down the street one day, picking up a family member after work, and we were talking about how the Ugly Betty on ABC was kind of lame compared to Betty LaFea, and a Latina girl came up and told me, "Yeah, you're right. That one doesn't compare to the real to Betty LaFea," and that's what Jaime Reyes basically feels like. He doesn't feel like authentically a Latin character. He feels like a white guy's version of Latin, and the film, in its desperate attempts to try to pander to Latin culture, miss the whole mark. Based on what I've known from living around Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, Venezuelans, Mexicans, Ecuadorians. This film misses the mark, and really misses the mark on the issues that a lot of Hispanic people deal with as related to their culture and coming up and, trying to come up financially. This whole film just it misses the mark because it's so busy trying to cram all the superhero stuff in that they miss out on all the cultural aspects of Hispanic life. And I mean, I've done my own things with trying to fuse cultures together. I mean, I fuse black culture and Egyptian and Nubian culture together in ISIS books, and I fuse it together in Esteem books, and I can do it and make it where you can see the culture and you can get to know the person. But that wasn't done here with Blue Beetle, and that's another thing that bugs me about this film. I mean, this Blue Beetle movie, it doesn't really come together. It could have possibly may have been able to come together on a third rewrite of this film, but what was presented on screen really just, they tried to put too much in. They had a lack of depth and dimension on the characters. They had a lack of story and story arcs for the characters. Many of the characters really never really come to life past a certain level. And everybody's here, but the whole thing is the story doesn't feel like it's one that's really well put together. I mean, this film it doesn't really work overall. It would work for a made-for-TV movie, but it doesn't work as a feature film. Now, another issue I have is the lack of an antagonist. Now, they look like they tried to make the Carpax character from the Shockwave character from Blue Devil, but it doesn't really come together because there's no relationship between Jaime and Ted Kord's aunt or the Carpax character. That's another weak aspect of this film, is there's no relationship between the hero and the villain the way it was in early MCU movies and in the 2002 Spider-Man. One of the things that makes 2002 Spider-Man a superior film is that you get that great contrast between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn. You get this great contrast between Peter Parker and Norman Osborn. You get this great whole antithesis of each of the characters. You get this character dynamic where these two characters are against each other, and you get this dynamic that shows how the choices each character makes impacts who they become. And that goes back to what Stan Lee was presenting in his stories about the choices defining the hero and the villain. So that's really lacking here with Blue Beetle. The villains are just set up to be jobbers, and everything is set up so that we could possibly get a Blue Beetle 2 with Ted Kord, and go out here and again bring Ted Kord in to take back over his city, or have them both mentoring each other. I believe that was the plan for Blue Beetle 2, and then possibly have Jaime out here. He's just being the Blue Beetle, and that was another thing that really irked me about Blue Beetle, was they kind of asexualized Jaime Reyes. I mean, Ted Kord's daughter was a little too old for him and was already up there as related to her career, but they don't really create a relationship dynamic where these two could go out here and be like Peter Parker or Mary Jane, or Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, or Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. I mean, when I'm finding it interesting, every time they do a black or a minority character, they always make it where they cannot be seen as the love interest or the hunk. No, with Jaime, he's bumbling and stumbling all around and trying to figure his way out as related to this suit, Kaji Da. But that really, I felt that was something that really shouldn't have been. It should have been where he was, as he was working with the suit, he was getting to know Ted Kord's daughter, and as they got to know each other, he got to have a love interest, because it always irks me that the white guy, he can have the love interest, he can have the girl of his dreams, he can go out here and, as he's taking on the bad guys, go out here and get decisive wins and get the girl. But when it comes to black characters like the Black Panther, they look to asexualize him, or they look to emasculate him. And in the case of Jaime Reyes, what they're doing is asexualizing him so that he won't appear to be masculine and strong. That's another issue I had with this film, was the way they just took away Jaime Reyes' masculinity. I mean, here's a 22-year-old man, and Peter Parker was about the same age, but Peter Parker, he can go out here and kiss Mary Jane upside down, but Jaime, he can't even be considered as related to being somebody who's in a relationship, and that's partially due to the cluttered screenplay, and also partially due to the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't want a Latino man to be seen as attractive because they want the white guys to be seen as the ideal. So it hurts the film because it makes the film more mid, and it makes Jaime look like a beta male instead of looking like a strong masculine lead. Yes, I get that he's a young guy, but the whole thing is Peter Parker was a young guy, but he was still allowed to be masculine, and he was younger than Jaime. I mean, Peter was about 18, 19 years old when he was in the 2002 Spider-Man, and even younger when he was in the MCU Spider-Man movies. But Jaime can't go out here and get the girl and beat the bad guy. No, everything's a bit of a compromise because they don't want Jaime to be a strong Latin hero, the same way they didn't want Virgil Hawkins to be a strong black hero. So that really impedes the film's progress. It impedes the film's ability to resonate with viewers, and it's possibly one of the reasons why the film bombed at the box office, because the Blue Beetle, what really bugs you about this movie is that, yes, it's a superhero film, but it's a mid-superhero film that really never gets to actualize its potential because the screenplay doesn't dig deep enough, and the film, yes, it has serviceable special effects that copy and paste MCU and Netflix shows, but never shows us anything special about its story to make us see a reason to care about the Blue Beetle. And that's sad because, again, here is Warner Brothers Discovery making another desperate attempt to try to get the success of the MCU. But what undermines that success is the Warner Brothers Discovery once more, because they pulled punches with this film instead of going all out, giving us a full multidimensional hero with their own mission, giving us a villain who would provide great contrast and show a reason for driving the conflict, and giving us something that was of substance. I mean, what was presented here in Blue Beetle that bugs me the most is that this film is just a glorified made-for-TV movie with $100 million special effects, and because it's a glorified made-for-TV movie script, it basically showed us every reason why it bombed at the box office on the screen. Yes, we see the special effects on the screen, but the whole thing is that while they are flashy, they have no substance. They don't connect us to anything. Nothing emotionally resonates with us. And with this Blue Beetle movie, nothing resonates with us because this movie doesn't give us anything to care about. It's just a popcorn movie that could have been made with a smaller budget, and just shows me, as related to superhero characters, not everybody rates a movie, not everybody deserves a movie, because not every character has enough story to make a movie. And with Jaime Reyes, it looks like to me doesn't have enough of a story that makes him ready for a film. If anything, he's just Kamala Khan in a Blue Beetle costume. And with that character, again, is another character who just wasn't ready for prime time because they haven't been able to build up enough of a story to resonate with the audience. And with Blue Beetle, again, what really bugs me is that this film got greenlit with such a weak script, because it shows me that the superhero genre is burning out, and it's burning out because you have a lot of desperate executives who want to go out here and get fast box office. They want to think they can overcompensate with the flash of CGI, but the substance of their stories is lacking, and this is why their movies are bombing at the box office, because you go here and make a movie. You make a movie without a story, and that's the thing that Blue Beetle lacked, was a compelling story that would get audiences to care about the Jaime Reyes character. Now, my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, is available on Lulu.com right now, and you can pick up a paperback copy for the same price that people paid for the Kickstarter in 2022. And if you want to pick up my first digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can go out here and send a donation to the Patreon, or head over to Kindle to get a copy for 99 cents, or you can get a copy in the paperback edition of Esteem Blast from the Past. And if you want to try out some of my action-packed fantasy fiction featuring characters like the Goddess Next Door or Hell's Aspiring Angel or the Man Who Rules the World. You can pick up the books of the Isis series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, books in the Black Goth Spinsterella trilogy, my Black sorority novel, The Thetas, my Black vampire novel, Eternal Night, and my Black business book, A Recipe for Success. You can find all that fantastic fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format by clicking the link in the description box, or you can head over to other online booksellers like Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Walmart and Target. And if you want to help me be able to make my next full SJS Direct comic, or you want me to do more reviews of superhero movies like Blue Beetle, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.